Welcome back, and thank you so much for watching the first video. I hope it wasn't too long, but I felt like I wanted to give you just an overview of where we're going and what I expect. And so without further ado, let's dive into our first grammar of the semester, which actually involves the present tense subjunctive. Now, those of you who took Latin 3 last year, you remember the present subjunctive because we studied it during spring semester. Of course, those of you who skipped Latin 3, you learned about this over the summer. But just to remind you really quickly about the present subjunctive and what it looks like, I just want to do that before we dive into further uses of the present subjunctive. So the thing about the present subjunctive, it's not used as frequently as the other three tenses, and it looks very similar to the present indicative. In fact, it only differs by a vowel. For example, first conjugation verbs, you see amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatis, amant, and then first conjugation subjunctive changes the A's to an E. Amem, ames, amet, amemus, ametis, ament. If you guys remember the memory trick, let's eat caviar, this is the E in let's. Second conjugation verbs usually have an E, well, usually, what am I saying? They always have an E in the present active indicative, but that changes to the present subjunctive. It becomes EA, takeam, takeas, takeat, takeamus, takeatis, takeant. And what I always tell students is, if you happen to see this spelling of that verb, takeat, in a sentence, you would probably think to yourself, that just kind of looks weird. It kind of looks like present tense, like indicative, but I feel like that's not right. If you have that feeling in your head, chances are you're looking at a present tense subjunctive, if it just looks a little weird. Okay, now that's the eat in let's eat caviar, EA. Third conjugation verbs, well, for example, you have trahu, trahis, trahit, trahimus, trahitis, trahunt. Third conjugation verbs are weird because they have O, and then you've got these I's, and then in the third person plural it becomes a U. Yeah, it's just weird. Now all of those, though, will change to A, traham, trahas, trahat. And for example, same thing. If you saw trahat in a sentence, you would say, "Whoa, that just looks strange." So once again, bam, it's present active subjunctive as opposed to present active indicative. This is the a in caviar in the phrase let's eat caviar. And then er, ia, is what happens for fourth conjugation. You see the present indicative here, audio, audis, audit, audimus, auditis, audiunt. All those are going to add in an A. Audiam, audias, audiat, audiamus, audiatis, audiant. Let's eat caviar. So present subjunctive for fourth conjugation has an IA. There it is for you. Hooray. Now last year we looked at examples like this, which we're not going to go over. But all of these you can see. Let me change this here for a second. We're not going to translate them, but you can see that the subjunctive verb is used in a clause, right? So these are dependent uses of the subjunctive present tense subjunctive. Okay, because you can see like ut and quare, ut, quid. Those all start clauses. We also looked at the present tense subjunctive of our irregular sum, es, est, sumus, estis, sunt verb. There it is. Sim, sis, sit, simus, sitis, sent. Now, part two, and here's the new part. We're going to talk about independent uses of the subjunctive. In other words, when the subjunctive is the main verb of the sentence. And if that's true, if the main verb of a sentence is in the subjunctive, chances are it will be a present tense subjunctive. Now, possible translations, this is where you really get the kind of like hypothetical or potential aspect of subjunctive. So possible translations might include let, or may, or should, or might, or could. Now, within this this broad category of independent uses of the subjunctive, we'll talk about specific independent uses of the subjunctive. The first one, hortatory and jussive. Now, hortatory and jussive those are statements, those are polite commands, as in, the famous example, let us pray. They're always translated into English using that word let. The only difference between hortatory and jussive is for hortatory, the subject of the sentence will always be I or we. In other words, first person. For jussive statements, the subject will be he, she, or it. That's the only difference. So, for example, a hortatory statement would be, oh, let us pray, because, hey, that is first person right there. A third person jussive statement, there's that famous expression famous saying by Marie Antoinette during the French Revolution, let them eat cake. I should have said jussive, it's third person he, she, it, or they could be the subject as well. So, here are some examples in Latin. Hortatory. Ne desperemus. Desperemus. We would expect it to be desperamus. That's a first conjugation verb, but hey, let's eat caviar. It changes. And speaking of let, now you understand why let is used in the phrase let's eat caviar, because let is the way that you translate hortatory and jussive subjunctives, which are the most common independent subjunctives used. Let us not despair. That's the way it would be translated. Look at the second one there. Aut vincamus, aut vincamur. That's a third conjugation verb, winco, winkere. We would expect it to be winkimus and winkimur, but it's let's eat changes to an A. Out means either or. These are both present tense subjunctives here. And the subject, mus and mur, O means I, S means you, T means he, she, it, mus means we, and then aristor, more, miniantor, passive voice being verb. Subject would also be we. So we have to kind of flip that around to say us. Let us conquer or be conquered. Whoa. And then last hortatory here. Gaudeamus hodie, which is the beginning of a very famous song that was sung for hundreds and hundreds of years. Actually, still is in some universities in Europe. Every time there's a graduation ceremony, and this means "Let us rejoice today." Now, here are some jussive examples. Once again, we're going to translate them as "let." The only difference being that hortatory, the subject, is first person. Jussive, the subject, is third person. Famous phrase in Latin, caveat emptor. Emptor means buyer. Let the buyer beware. Fiat lux. I believe we had that as a famous phrase last year toward the end of the year. Let there be light. Epistulam statim recitet. The subject here is missing, but it ends in T, so it's got to be a he, she, or it. Cannot be epistulam, because that's already accusative, so let's just say the subject is she. Let her recite the letter at once. So there you have it, hortatory and jussive. Now we're going to move on to a different use of the independent subjunctive, and that's called a deliberative question. And hey, you'll be able to recognize it because it's a question, and the main verb will be subjunctive. That's about all you need to know. So it's used specifically when you are deliberating about what to do. It's an iffy situation, right? So their iffiness equals subjunctive. Most often used in the first person. In other words, the subject will be I or we, but not necessarily. And it's translated as usually as should. And so here are some quick examples, and then we'll do a few more. So quid faciam means what should I do? Quo fugiam, where should I flee? Utrum captivos liberemus, an interficiamus. Okay, so both of these are present subjunctive. And again, we're going to translate this as should. And on here means or. Should we liberemus the captivoses? Should we free the prisoners? Or should we interficiamus them? Should we kill them? Oh, let's let them go. Why not? Okay, so here are some examples of the independent subjunctive at work. And I feel like these are fairly straightforward. Statim redeat. Well, if we see here, redo, here we have a present subjunctive, meaning to go back or to return. And it ends in a T, so the subject will be he, she, or it. Let's say it's he here. And this is the entire sentence. So what kind of a subjunctive is it if the subject is he, she, or it, and it's present subjunctive, and we're not asking a question? Is it hortatory? Is it jussive or deliberative question? The answer would be jussive. Let him return, statim, at once. What about this next one? Quid decom. Quid decom. Dico dicere, third conjugation verb. So if it has an A, as in let's eat caviar, it's present subjunctive. Dico means to say. And notice how it ends with a question mark. So is that going to be hortatory, jussive, or deliberative question? The answer, of course, is deliberative question. And we use the word should when we translate those. What should I say? How about flammas extinguere conemur? Conemur. Conor, conari, conatus. That's a first conjugation deponent verb. So let's changes to from the A to an E. That's present subjunctive. It's deponent. So even though it ends in MUR, which is a passive ending, we're going to translate that actively. And the subject is we, right? And is this hortatory, jussive, or deliberative question? The answer is hortatory. Let us try to put out the flames. How about this next one? Sit amicitia inter nos et vos. You have a prepositional phrase there. Inter nos et vos. Oops, didn't mean to do that. That means between, basically between you and us. Amicitia means friendship. That's going to be our subject. And we have sit, which is the present subjunctive form of est. So the subject is amicitia, friendship. That's a third person. So it's not going to be hortatory, because that would be first person. It's not going to be a deliberative question, because we're not asking a question. Therefore, it'll be jussive. Let there be friendship between you and us. Last two. Utrum habeamus an maneamus. Ends in a question mark. Pretty sure it's going to be a deliberative question. How do we know it's a deliberative question as opposed to just a regular question? Well, because habeamus and maneamus, maneo, manere, see the EA there? We're looking at second conjugation verbs. Let's eat. So these are subjunctive verbs. Therefore, it's a deliberative question. It would be a regular old question if they were spelled the indicative way. The subject is mus, which would be we. So should we leave or should we stay? And then finally, eamus. Wow, that's it. That's the entire sentence. One word. Eamus. It's a verb. It happens to be subjunctive, present tense. Mus means we. So is it hortatory, jussive, or deliberative question? I think by now you all guessed. It is hortatory, first person. Let us go. That's right. Let us go. And now I will go. And so will you. Until another day. Goodbye.